Hello friends, welcome back, or if you are new here, welcome. I am getting right into it today in this week of dinners video. I'm starting off with a creamy ranch chicken. I'm going to admit that it took me a really long time to actually cook this meal because when I first found this recipe years ago, it seemed like a lot at the time. I definitely judged this recipe by the picture instead of initially looking at the recipe, so for a good couple of years, I thought this recipe was going to be pretty difficult and I did not attempt it. However, I actually looked at the recipe years later and it was super simple and really did not have many ingredients either. So I've been making this recipe for a couple of years now and it has continued to be a family favorite. So lesson learned, never judge a book by its cover. I usually serve potatoes with this meal because of the sauce that you'll make with it. It makes a really wonderful gravy, but we've had potatoes a couple times already this week, so I wanted to switch it up, and so I made rice instead. The recipe also calls to use chicken breasts, but I don't have any on hand, so I am using chicken thighs instead. I put them out on a paper towel lined plate and I dried them. And then I sprinkled on Italian seasoning, salt, pepper, and garlic. The recipe does not call for garlic, but if you have seen any of my cooking videos before, you will know that I deviate from the recipes quite often. So I felt like this recipe needed garlic, and so I added garlic to it. And then I put in the pan some olive oil and butter. Once that's all melted and the pan is hot, I put seasoned side down in the chicken and I filled the pan pretty full. I'm not cooking them through here, I'm just kind of creating a crust, so I'll cook them on each side about 4 to 5 minutes, and then I'll take them out, set them aside, and make the sauce in the same pan. I did not make recipe cards for these meals that I'll have on the video today, but I will put the recipes in the description box below. I am just making the normal white rice that I usually make. I'm steaming a bunch of white rice in this pan, and I always add in a bag of frozen vegetables because I try to just work that in whenever I can. I have kids that I don't really know any kids that love eating vegetables, but if I can work vegetables in, I will. So that's what I usually do because they actually love rice with vegetables. So I always put the frozen vegetables, still frozen, in with the rice, and then I'll pour chicken broth into the rice and steam both the vegetables and the rice in the chicken broth. I cook the chicken about 5 minutes on the first side, so I'm turning them all over and they have a really nice crust on top. I deviated again with the recipe here. I took out all the chicken, which it does say to do, but I'm deglazing the pan with some bone broth that I had in the fridge, and it really did not change the recipe very much. I know that you create a sauce and it did not make it too thin at all. So if you want to use a chicken broth or any kind of broth, really, you can do that to deglaze the pan before you add in the cream of chicken, sour cream, and milk. This recipe does use a whole packet of ranch seasoning. However, it is not an overbearing ranch flavor. I honestly don't even taste very much ranch at all. My daughter, she does not like any dressing really unless it's homemade, and ranch is one of those things she does not like, and she actually does not even know that ranch is in this meal. She eats this and loves this and has no idea that it includes ranch at all. So I don't think it really tastes very much like ranch. Now that I have the sauce completely incorporated and mixed together really well, I'm putting the chicken back into the saucepan and I'm going to let it simmer for a while to cook completely through. I'm moving on to homemade pizza. This recipe in particular is a little different because the crust does not include yeast. So if you're used to like a Chicago style pizza crust, it is pretty similar, not exactly, but it's not like the fluffy kind that you would traditionally get at like a Pizza Hut or something like that. So it is harder, it is crunchier. But I actually found this recipe when it was a while ago. It was kind of out of necessity. I was not used to baking with yeast yet, and we didn't have a lot of ingredients, and I was kind of crunched with time. So I found this recipe and I ended up making it, and it was really good. And we are from Chicago, so it is similar for us, but it was made out of necessity and it works really well, and it's just kind of something that's stuck. It also does not have very many ingredients, and my kids really, really like it. So I tend to make these pizzas when I'm trying to save a little on our grocery budget. My kids like to keep it pretty simple with their pizza toppings. One of their absolute favorite is bacon. So I am making bacon pizzas. One I'm going to put vegetables on too, and the other I'm just going to keep very simple with bacon and cheese. While I was getting all of the ingredients together for the crust, I went ahead and put in a baking sheet full of bacon. And so I already have that baked and cut up. The oil you saw me pouring into these pans before I put the crust in was actually the bacon grease. So I poured a little bit in and then greased it all up the sides too. I've always baked these pizzas in cast iron pans, but if you want to put it in a pizza pan, that would work perfectly fine too. After I got the crust in each pan, I started baking it in a 400-degree oven, and I like to pre-bake them before I put the toppings on to make sure that the crust is crunchier and not soggy. So I'll cook them until I don't really have a time frame, but it's always at 400 degrees, and I just cook it until it starts to brown on the bottom. While the crust is baking, I'm getting the toppings ready to go, and I'm going to make an Olive Garden salad. It is not exactly the Olive Garden salad, but it is pretty darn close. This is one of my favorite sides to serve with the homemade pizzas. To make this large Olive Garden-like salad, I start by cutting up a head of iceberg lettuce. I do it in small pieces because I do have kids and they like smaller pieces of lettuce. Then I will thinly slice red onion to put in. I like to add in baby spinach, sliced tomatoes. I'll add some sliced cucumbers, a couple of the whole pepperoncinis, and some grated Parmesan cheese. I usually will use the off-brand Olive Garden Italian dressing, and I'll show you that here in just a minute. If you like olives, you could add those in too. I think the Olive Garden might actually add olives in their salads. I'm not sure though. But most of my family does not like olives, so I just omit those. I hardly ever buy actual pizza sauce. I will usually just buy this cheap traditional or a marinara sauce. I feel like it works perfectly the same. And that way, if I want to make a spaghetti or a lasagna or something like that, I have sauce which I could use either way. This is a thicker crust, so I do put on quite a bit of sauce for them to make sure that it's not too dry. Here's how the pizzas turned out. They were so good. I think we only had one slice left. It was the perfect, quick, and easy meal for a weeknight. The next meal that I'm starting is a burger bowl, and I am not going to put a recipe down for this because it is so self-explanatory. I saw this, it was not even a recipe. I saw a picture on the internet of one of these, and it was in like a Whole30 Foods thing. I'm not even sure what it was. But anyway, so that is where I'm getting my inspiration. I am going to cut up all the things that my family likes to eat on burgers. And instead of using buns or actually even making burger patties, I'm taking all the ingredients and everybody can make just their own custom burger bowl. I'm cutting up the toppings right now and I'm putting them all on this plate so people can kind of just pick what they would like on the top of their bowls. But the onion that you saw me cut up, I cut up half a white onion and I put that in with the ground beef that I'm currently browning on the stove. Instead of making a side or anything, I'm going to cut up some potatoes. I'll dice them up and then that's what's going to go on the bottom of the burger bowls, and then I'll kind of just assemble the rest of them just depending on what each person wants. Now, instead of doing burger patties, I went ahead and I just thawed 1 pound of ground beef, and that is what I'm browning here with the half of the white onion that I chopped up earlier. And then I'm going to cook the potatoes in the other pan until they are nice and tender and brown. I decided to slice up some cucumbers because even though that's not usually on a burger, my daughter does not like pickles. So I thought that this would offer a good crunch for her, and she actually really enjoyed them. And there was a couple people that actually put this in their bowl too. I also sliced up an avocado for people to put in their bowls as well. I also made a very easy garlic aioli sauce. It has mayo, sour cream, garlic, and a little squeeze of lemon and some black pepper. This ended up being a great topping for everybody's burger bowl. This next meal ended up being kind of a crunch for time type of meal. I needed something quick. It was a really busy weeknight. We had a ton of things going on this evening, so I needed a quick, easy, and cheap meal. So I made a Marry Me chicken pasta, is what it's called. While the pasta was cooking, I was browning this chicken and making the sauce that's going to go in the pasta. The recipe calls to use 8 ounces of a penne pasta, but I did not have that. I only had spaghetti noodles, so that's what I used. You'll start off by dicing up some chicken breasts into small bite-sized pieces and adding them to a skillet with olive oil. You'll brown them and cook them completely before you add the seasonings and different creams and the cheese. You actually will not see me adding cheese into this because when I was looking at the recipe, I did not even realize, I didn't see it. It was at the very bottom. So I did not add cheese, and this ended up being very, very good. And I'm assuming if you add the half a cup of Parmesan, like it says, it will be even better. But I did not add that. I also did not have sun-dried tomatoes, but I used some of the tomato sauce that I had left over from the pizzas that I made the night before. So I just used that, and I'm assuming it would be very good with sun-dried tomatoes, but it was just as good with the cheap pasta sauce that I had already had on hand. This meal ended up being a really great option if you are short on time and you don't have a ton of ingredients. Like I said, I did not have a lot of these ingredients, and I just made it with what I had already on hand. I didn't have the heavy cream. I used half and half in milk. Just kind of use what you have on hand and it will work out. This next meal can be a dinner, but I am making it for breakfast. This is kind of an extra one. I had a special request to show them how to make some chorizo. So that is what we're making this morning for breakfast. Before we moved down here, we used to eat chorizo for lunch a lot with our friends, but since moving down, we haven't had it nearly as often. I think it's just out of sight, out of mind type of thing. But I've started buying it again, and my kids really, really love it for breakfast with some tortillas mixed in with the hash browns and an egg on top. It is one of their favorite breakfasts. Now you can most definitely make this in a skillet. I usually do. However, I got this griddle out because I thought the boys were going to help me make this until I started making the chorizo and it was just popping constantly. So they were actually behind the camera. Lincoln, my 7-year-old, is working the camera for me, and they were waiting for me to give them the go ahead. However, I decided last second that I was just going to do the whole meal because I didn't want them getting popped and burned the whole time. So anyway, to make the chorizo, you will take it out of the package and you'll chop it up. It kind of becomes somewhat mushy, liquidy, and after you've cooked that down a little bit, you will then, I usually use 2 eggs and I mix them in with the chorizo really, really good. As it cooks, it will start to have a much better consistency. I like to cook my chorizo until you kind of see little black and brown bits, not burned, but they're kind of charring a little bit. That is the flavor that I like. So I'm sauteing it until I see those and just stirring it every now and then, allowing it to cook through, and then also the potatoes. Once they both start looking like they're getting done, then I will put an egg on, and my kids usually like it over easy. Theo is the only one that likes scrambled, so they'll have over easy, and I also warm the corn tortillas to serve with it. But that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and cooking. I hope you got some meal ideas that you can use on a tight budget or when you're pressed for time. But anyway, I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.